Good evening, everyone. It is so lovely to see you all. Those of you we know, those of you we've never seen before, welcome to Wiston. This is seriously exciting for me. I've been in the depths of homeschooling for the last 3 months, so I feel like I've been let out of school. I've even got my gold shoes on. And for those of you who don't have a clue who on earth I am, let me introduce myself. I'm Kirsty. I am married to Richard Goring, who are the family who have owned and managed this estate, Wiston Estate, since 1743. I got married to Richard only a mere 16 years ago, and so was really a new kid on the block when we arrived here in 2006.
I'm not Richard, by the way.
No, I feel this man here needs practically no introduction. He is our winemaker, of whom we could be no prouder. In fact, I don't know if any of you have heard of, I certainly wouldn't have done before I entered this zone, Stephen Spurrier, no less, a great, prolific wine writer. We are quite fond of saying, has dubbed Dermot England's best winemaker. So yeah,
Well,
we sometimes have to make the doors bigger.
I think he'd taken significant refreshment at the time. When he said that,
Which
so.
we love to ply people with. Anyway, this is welcome, and this is our culmination of our celebrations for English Wine Week, and we are just so thrilled that you are joining us for what, for me, is a really, really quite exciting.
Yeah, it's great. Tasting. It's great to have you back on the scene, Kirsty.
Oh, thanks.
I myself have just come out of confinement, quarantine.
Yeah.
I'm 3 hours out of a 14-day quarantine.
Arrived 3 minutes to go.
Absolutely,
yeah. We're right on time.
So, it's great to be doing this. I've done quite a few of them over the last few months. Really, we've done how many YouTubes?
I think
did
we've
we
done
do?
About 4, 5.
We've done 4. Yeah, I think we did the first one with
you've done an
Alex.
Instagram live.
Yeah, I've done a few Instagram lives, etc. But no, it's a very, very interesting way to connect with you guys, and the feedback that we've had for all of the stuff that we've done has been wonderful, you know. So why stop this really is the question. I don't think this is something that we should stop after business resumes.
Although I have to say at this point, I have been known to mute at some moment, and as long, to be honest, you are enjoying some English wine tonight, we'll be happy, and then you can watch it another time if you're having a lovely soiree outside. Okay. So it's great that you can sort of, I think somehow, I'm not great on the world of YouTube, but you can subscribe and then
I think one of the most remarkable things about YouTube is whatever is posted on it, unless you tear it down, it's there forever. Yeah. You know, it's there forever.
Okay, so we better behave.
We'll be immortalizing ourselves tonight.
Now, you need to introduce which wines, because I know we've got quite a few to
So, Helen McGinn on Saturday Kitchen last week described this as Kirsty and Dermot doing a cellar raid, which is a pretty good description, really, of what we're going to do. Because we put our heads together and we thought, let's pull up some wines out of the historical cellars of Wiston Estate. Old wines that aren't necessarily available anymore, but are tasting absolutely sensational, and that demonstrate just how well the Wiston wines age and how well English sparkling wines in general can age. And we thought, why don't we look back? It's 2020. Why don't we look back at the 2010 vintage, 10 years ago, a decade on from the 2010 vintage. And this is when we made quite a suite of wines. We made a Cuvée Brut 2010. A Blanc Blanc 2010 and our Blanc Noir 2010. And we're going to start tonight's session
with, I don't even know.
That's what you need to know.
I don't know.
Let's
I'm
go
going to pour you.
For the Cuvée Brut 2010.
Cuvée Brut.
Cuvée Brut 2010.
Go.
Look at this. Okay. Doesn't even have a label.
No.
But do we know? Do we know when it was disgorged?
I think this is a really, really good question. Because we're so used to our geeky labels on the back.
You
pour, Dermot. You're the judge
here.
Great stoppers.
I have a feeling that this was disgorged many, many years ago. So the Cuvée Brut 2010. So there's quite a lot to say about this wine, actually. Quite a lot to say. I'll try and only say the important bits. Stick to the salient information. But at the time, and we've got to consider that, this was only the third vintage of Wiston Estate. 2008 first vintage, 2009, then 2010. And the winery was very, very young at the time. And I took a lot of risks making this wine. It's the first wine at Wiston Estate that I put entirely into old barrels. I'd bought the barrels at...
Smell that straight away. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's
gosh.
creamy. So I bought a lot of barrels from Domaine Jacques Prieur in Burgundy, and I put all of this wine through it. The previous 08 and 09 Cuvée Bruts had been Chardonnay dominant wines. This actually is the first Pinot dominant Cuvée, and that style is what we've maintained ever since. With the Cuvée Brut that followed in 2013, 15, 16, 18, blah, 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 blah. It's all Pinot dominant. So 1/3 Chardonnay, 2/3 Pinots. The Pinot Meunier is playing a slightly smaller role. It's around about 20 or 22%, but
22, yeah.
Totally in old barrels. No malolactic fermentation. When we released it, it only had 2 years in the cellar, and then we released it at 4 grams per litre dosage.
Which means a very, very small amount of sugar. And there is something astoundingly fresh about this one. I mean, you cannot believe that this has been in the cellar for 10 years.
Yeah.
It is still singing.
That's absolutely
with
alive.
that. I remember being with my father in the Findon. So this is in Harry and Pitt's drawing room, tasting this, and I remember him talking about lemony, sherbety kind of bub, and it's still it's fresh and
like
it
lemon
bounces.
and shortbread biscuits.
Yeah, it's just absolutely phenomenal.
And it's developing a slightly honeyed character as well, but it's a very, very fresh and kind of angular honey character rather than being too heavy.
There's just nothing.
Wow.
I mean, I always say, Dermot, when people are asking, like, how would you put in a nutshell your wines, and this one does it, is that they always go in a direction. They're always in the trade. You lot talk, really fancily about sort of linear acidity. Yeah. They always do that, and yet this, when they've had a bit of age, oh my goodness, they have some excitement and breadth along the way. And actually, it's almost like spice at times. But this is, to me, that is just bouncing, sherbety, lemony. Oh, absolutely.
It's remarkable. And you're tasting this today. It's probably about 4 years on cork. So it was bottled in 2011, and let's say it was disgorged in 2016. It's had 5 years on these, and then almost another 5 years, 4 years on cork. But on the basis of this, how this is tasting, this could last for another 10 years for sure.
Yeah, it's like just when we're going to talk about aging, obviously quite a bit. Just for those of you, again, like me, who might not totally get the difference with a wine that you can or can't age. I love to think of it as, I squeeze a bit of lemon on my avocado if I'm wanting to keep it fresher for a bit longer. This has that kind of zippy acidity that just will preserve something. It will keep it fresh. It will stop it going just, when something's just a bit flabby in your mouth and you think, oh, it's kind of lost that zest. This has it, and it will stay. Yep. Now, you haven't got a spittoon, I've noticed.
I haven't. I'd love to have a spittoon.
We could ask Stage Right to go and get another spittoon, although Dermot he'll be...
I can put so much in your glass.
I know.
And actually, Anne Krubel, MW, tasted this just a few days ago. I think it was at the beginning of English Wine Week, and she pulled this out of her cellar, and she posted it on Instagram, and I just thought, wow, what an amazing blast from the past. Thank you very much indeed, Pete. Amazing blast from the past to see this wine, and that's one of the reasons why we've pulled it out here tonight. Now, I said earlier on that I took quite a few risks with this wine because, it was putting into 100% old oak barrels. It's not the old oak that was risky, it's putting 100% of the wine into it. But then also, I measured the wine for its chill stability before bottling, in full anticipation that it would show that the wine needed to be cold stabilized and needed to be filtered. But I put together the blend and then realized that it was already chill stable because 2010, the winter between 10 and 11, was the coldest winter we've had in the last decade. So all of the barrels in the cellar got very, very cold, and barrels tend to cold stabilize much more easily than stainless steel tanks. So it was bottled.
For those of you who don't have a clue what Dermot is talking about with cold stab, basically, if you put a bottle of wine, actually Pip and I have been known to need to do this, to put a bottle of something into the freezer, something fizzy, because you thought, it's not quite chilled in time. If you did it with a wine that wasn't stable and you put it in the freezer, you could see some funny old crystals, and that's why we do it. So anyway, it was handy that that process did not need to it's just another pure...
It's another aspect of the purity of the wine, yeah. And, you know, some winemakers would worry about things like this, but yeah, it's like what Andrew Jefford says, you've got to choose what you're going to worry about, and in this instance I chose not to worry.
So I would say, we cheers on that one.
Cheers,
to purity.
yeah. And this is very, very special. I mean, I remember saying at the time, this is the wine I was most proud of making, this 2010.
Yeah.
So,
and actually, we have been flagged that we need to go on to our next wine, and we're not going to make it. But just to say, I do remember you getting, I think it was an email, but it may have well have been a telegram from old Jancis.
From Jancis, that's right.
And you saying this is like a telegram from the Queen.
Yeah,
and she had said in her tasting it was her personal favourite. And I have to say, drinking it now, blinking head. Wow. She had those kind of taste buds that could fast forward time. You know, she could see where it was going. And God.
And congratulations to the guys at Noble Rot who organised that tasting and wrote it up. That was special.
What would you like now, sir?
I think now we'd go on to the Blanc Blanc 2010.
Okay. I'm going to let you take this.
Excellent, okay.
Because actually, there is no wine that I really like to be poured more. If there was one favourite wine that you have made at Wiston, and I know there are things actually I'm tasting tonight that I've hardly tasted, but this was always the one that I would give to very special friends.
This is the game changer.
Because there was never enough of it for me.
Game changer, this wine, you know, just purely from a production point of view, one of the main reasons that we moved the blend of the cuvee from being Chardonnay dominant to being Pinot Noir dominant was that we had more Chardonnay to make a Blanc Blanc on its own. Yeah, because most of the vineyard is Chardonnay, but the cuvee tends to eat up a lot of Chardonnay. But just to be able to make a decent quantity, and this vintage 2010, it's worth remembering. If there's one vintage that I would like to repeat year on year on year, because of all of the characteristics, the positive characteristics of it, it is 2010. Huge crop, effortlessly ripe, no disease. It was a joy to make wine from. The wines released showed very, very well when they were young, and now here we are 10 years later, and they're absolutely marvellous wines with age as well. Perfect, perfect vintage.
I mean, Pip used to talk about, sorry, that's our riddling machine. The beeps are not that we're about to go off air. It's our riddling machine, which is a machine that is moving bottles.
And it's not the fire alarm.
No.
For those of you who watched this a few weeks ago, it is not the fire alarm.
No.
We've disconnected that.
Things just crack on in the winery. I mean, I think of this wine as being a wine that absolutely is about this place. And for me, I remember, I met Pip and Harry long before there was a vineyard, and I remember Pip saying, I am just so curious to know what would the wine be like of this land. You know, she'd grown up. For those of you who don't know Pip, my absolutely the most glamorous, gorgeous, passionate mother-in-law one could ever wish for. She had grown up in the Cape in South Africa, going to many a winery and saying, oh gosh, if you go there to Franschhoek, it tastes like this. If you're in the Hellemenade Valley, near to where their family home is now, it tastes like this. And I just remember her saying, I would just love to know what would it taste like if it came off our chalk. And this, to me, just does it. It just totally.
What I love about this wine is that, when I was young, as is the case with many Blanc Blancs, they can be very, very austere, and challenging in their youth. But you can see what the wine is going to develop into, how it's going to flower and blossom with time. This 2010, it's probably, well, who knows if it's peaking now or otherwise, but it's just sensational now. It's just absolutely gorgeous now. And it's gently put on weight, put on fat, put on texture, put on, a bit of more creaminess, oiliness,
it's got that Danish pastry in the back.
Exactly.
And yet it's still got that kind of racy, lemony acidity that's just could cut through a knife. And
precision, a sense of maturity, growing maturity, yet it's still sprightly like a little
Now,
lamb.
someone has just asked, probably on Instagram, why would we release most of this wine, and then keep back some for later release. So we have got, I know we have still got 1,000 bottles of this, which have had to be hidden from myself. Why do we do that?
Well, there's a few reasons, really. You know, this wine is so good and displays such an ability to age that it's a shame not to just sell it all. The demand was so high for this wine at the time. It won significant awards, that always helps sales, but it's great to try and just hold back a little bit of the volume of wine, to keep it on its lees for another few years, to really give it the opportunity to express what it really can do. And we're in that phase with this wine now. So this is going to be re-released shortly as a late disgorged 2010
price, because it is, I mean, oh my goodness.
There's not many bottles left. I think it was 1,000 bottles.
1,000,
the production was 10,000. Is that correct? I remember, in 2010 we made 8,000 bottles of the Cuvée Brut, 2010, and then 10,000 bottles of the Blanc Blanc. And so we've sold 90% of those, and this is just the remaining 1,000. 10 years after vintage.
And I can't remember if you said, and I'm never one to go into over technicalities, but I do always say to people, this wine to me just absolutely sums up what balance is about in a wine. And I think it is because you went half for those barrels that we have come to love at Wiston and give that beautiful texture. And you literally, for those of you who think, what the heck does a barrel do to wine? To me, the most obvious thing it does actually is how it feels in the mouth. It literally, the bubbles are softer and smaller and spread. It also, though, will add some weight and fatness, won't it? Because unlike stainless steel, which the other half of this wine, which is why I just think it is so incredibly balanced, the stainless steel tank, when the wine's in there, no oxygen getting in, man-made thing, they're blinking expensive because of all the pressure and the this and the that. A barrel, obviously a living thing, so it's got, there is some little tiny gaps for some oxygen to get in and make
communicates. I like to think of the wine in a barrel communicating with the environment outside the barrel. Inside the stainless steel tank, it's pretty inert, but it works very well because you're keeping that absolute precision of the stainless steel, that freshness, that absolute direction, whereas you get this creamy, rich, deep, complex development of the texture of the wine inside the barrel. We love it. Absolutely love it.
The awards on this wine were totally phenomenal. I think, on memory, we had to redo the postcard about 4 times because it got 6, no less.
Well, really? 6 awards. I think the most significant one was, the first one it got was Tom Stevenson, SEVL, and then the late Dr. Tony Jordan's Champagne and Sparkling Wine competition, where it won Best Blanc Blanc and Best in Class Blanc Blanc against some pretty serious competition back then, actually.
And these people, they are phenomenal at seeing what that potential is as well. Because I remember first tasting it, you got a hint it was always beautifully balanced and everything. But actually now tasting it, it's like, oh my word.
Well, we've got a wine later on in this little tasting. After we move on from the trilogy of 2010s, we're actually going to be getting a taste of a very, very, very special Blanc Blanc, which is older than this. And there's an interesting story to tell about that.
I can't really bear to throw this away, but I know in the aid of time we are going to have to. So, do you want to stick on 10 and go for that Blanc de Blanc? Oh, sorry, stick on. Do I mean 10? No, I mean stick on Blanc de Blanc. Sorry.
Shall we go? Actually, yeah. Let's rip up the rule book and go straight onto the 2009 because
I think we should save
the Blanc Noir is a bit of a sledgehammer when compared to the finesse and delicacy of this Blanc Blanc. So this is unreleased wine. This is from a tiny quantity of Chardonnay from the 2009 vintage. So 2008, our first vintage, was less than 4 tons, okay, from a 6.5 hectare vineyard. That's very, very, very small indeed. In 2009, we had a bigger vintage, but most of those grapes went into other wines, and I just had 800 liters, about 900 liters, half in barrels, which were quite younger barrels, and then an equivalent amount in stainless steel. To make this 2009 Blanc Blanc. It tasted outrageously good in barrel, absolutely outrageously good. 2009 was, you know, a powerful vintage, very, very high maturity, high ripeness in the fruit, but also correspondingly very high acidity. Made great vintage champagnes in Champagne because of that acid structure. Tasting this wine a few years after bottling, it seemed, wow, this seems a shame to actually release it. A, it's such a small quantity, and B, the 2010 was ready, you know, at that time. So we haven't released this wine. We haven't released this wine. It's been
and
in
it
the
is
cellar.
when you talk about, you know, a small amount of fruit coming off, you know, that size of a vineyard, there is, you know, people think, well, what's so good about that? There's this concentration, isn't there, of flavour. When you have these massive, huge vintages with absolutely tons of fruit, you've obviously got a little bit of dilution going on because you've got that flavour being plumped up into lots and lots of grapes. When you smell something like this, you suddenly realise a lot of energy was going into these grapes.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. They're tiny yields. The yields of Wiston Vineyard in the early years were, you know, minuscule, really minuscule. So, and you can see this in the wine. This kind of concentration of flavour and density, the compactness of the wine. Yeah. So it takes a long time to unfurl.
Do you know what I mean at all about sort of apricot jam? I used to think, I mean, absolutely bizarre when people start talking about, you know, these different food substances when they're putting their nose into a glass of wine. But there is something just so unbelievable.
It's how that apricot, yellow stone fruit, yellow plums is complexed by the yeast, the development of all of that autolysis over the years. Because this is just disgorged. It's about 7 or 8 years on its lees, and now about 3 or 4 years on cork. It's absolutely magnificent. It's unbelievable.
We are not letting this wine go very far, Dermot. I don't know if you know this, but this is only ever going to be released from our cellar door.
Good idea.
And although I don't think you guys can see in this screenshot, this very carefully edited screenshot, there is actually quite a lot of building works going on. In fact, it's quite hard to get your car anywhere near this place at the moment. And so there is going to be next year a cellar door where this will be one of the most exciting things you can get. I mean, it is, I don't know if, I'm hoping people are seeing your face. Dermot doesn't do those kind of faces every day of the week. It's a sort of, it is intense. I mean,
the intense is a really good way to describe this wine, because it's got so many dimensions to it. Again, you know, you got that sense of maturity that you could only get from a wine that's been on its lees for 7 or 8 years. Yeah. But then you have this unbelievable freshness and precision and youth and energy that's still bound up inside the wine.
At the end, the finish on there, you think, yeah, it could keep going. It's like someone who's got to the end of a race and you think, no, they're still running. I mean, they could still go.
Yeah. This lacy, intricate nose and bouquet, which is so developed, full of white flowers, full of these lovely, gentle, cobwebby, pillowy features.
I have to say, I mean, we're not going to have time to talk much about food and pairing.
I think we'll come back to this one later on.
We might. I'm just going to say one thing about Blanc. For me, Blanc de Blanc is unbelievably sort of special in terms of this place, because the first time I ever remember coming down to visit Harry and Pip, I did have a slight interest in one of their sons, it has to be said. I remember Pip putting, it wasn't their own, but a Blanc de Blanc, I have to say, at that point, I probably hardly knew what a Blanc de Blanc even was. And for those of you who don't, it is white juice taken from white grapes. So it is just 100% Chardonnay. And I remember her putting a bottle of that into the freezer, as I spoke about, and then we had gone to the garden, we had picked broad beans, as I was doing actually on the last YouTube video with the boys, and we popped the broad beans, and we had a sip of this Blanc de Blanc, and I thought, I'm in. I just love this. This is just complete heaven. And there is something about the sort of absolute freshness of both. This is just absolutely blew my mind. And I thought, she knows how to do life.
Yeah.
It's not Blanc de Blanc broad beans. Yeah. Okay, oh my gosh, what are we on? Have I got that? Have I not tipped yet?
No, you haven't tipped in there. Okay, so here we go. If we look at Blanc de Blanc being the absolute zenith of freshness, elegance, precision in sparkling wine, and we swing the pendulum right back the other way and we go to 100% Blanc Noir, Pinot Noir in this instance, only black grapes. the black grapes are richer, broader, they're much more meatier, they're much more robust, really, when you talk about sparkling wine. You don't expect a huge level of finesse and elegance, certainly not on the scale that we measure the best Blanc de Blancs and Chardonnays. But we're looking at the same vintage, or at least the same from the trilogy of 10s here, 2010. Everything tasted magnificent in 2010. And here we are 10 years down the line, still with this freshness, this unbelievable sense of freshness and vitality that's still in the wines after a decent period of time.
But this, we have to say, I mean, there is just something opulent, there is something altogether different. It is rich in a way that those Blanc de Blancs, they're not trying to be. This, I mean, I always say, my husband, he's not bling in any way. Most of his life is either in a spreadsheet or driving on muddy fields. But he knew, and he was pretty involved in deciding this in the box that this goes in, so it never sees the light of day. And we've gone a bit bling because this is out there. This feels royal, doesn't it?
This is gastronomic wine without even requiring food. Yeah. It's amazing.
And I know it would be remiss of us to not say this wine really was the reason we won Winery of the Year in 2019. It was for other things as well, but this topped all of it got sort of best Pinot Noir, best sparkling wine from the Wine GB Awards. So we're nothing if not proud of this wine.
It comes from a very specific part of the vineyard. It's actually the first 28 rows of 200 rows in the vineyard, which are just Burgundy clone, Dijon clone, red wine clones. 114 and 115 are the clones. So they're different from the Champagne clones. And we get this incredible richness. I made a small, just 3 barrels of the 2009 Blanc de Noir. Yeah. And it worked out so well that I thought in 2010 there was enough for 3,000 bottles. There was 10 barrels worth of this. So I just thought, let's do it. Let's put that into this Blanc de Noir. And you're absolutely correct. In 2018 Wine GB Awards, it stole the show. It won the trophy, Best Blanc de Noir, trophy for Best UK Sparkling Wine, and then the Supreme Champion trophy for the best wine in the entire competition.
And this, I mean, for me, those of you who know me, I can't really go a day without some significant amount of cheese. And if there is a wine to pair with cheese, and I would say you could do that at any time of day, but interestingly, and people often talk, don't they, about having sparkling wines before a meal. I actually have come to absolutely love them when I go home from a show and we occasionally just have a little bit that's left. And it might even have lost some of its fizz. But this after a meal with a slice of,
with the cheese
I mean, anything is just completely divine. And even actually, you know, a lot of people also think sparkling wine is just in summer. But the richness of it, I've been known to be by our fire, you know, curled up. And this is just, it's almost, it's got that kind of almost warming. Actually, our sales director's husband is an amazing chef, and he did it with, Michael, absolutely phenomenal. He did a harvest dinner in our vineyard with Jerusalem artichokes, goat's cheese curd, and then truffle shavings on top.
Blinking flip.
It was blinking flip. And actually, Wiston Garden, I remember 2 years ago, had this just ridiculous overhaul of Jerusalem artichokes, and you know how they go that kind of nutty, almost truffly when you just literally roast them with olive oil. That and this, oh my goodness, absolutely amazing.
I mean, it's got elegance, but it is a monster of wine. It's huge on the palate. It's gigantic, but it's got such focus and detail to it with being such a big wine. Very often when we've done flights of tastings, and this wine, you know, kind of assaults your senses in all the right ways, it's then very difficult for the next wines to actually assert themselves because this is such a dynamic wine.
You go.
Are we doing a special offer on this wine, Kirsty Goring?
Oh, we remembered. We are. There is on a case of 6. You will get a little money off. Not masses, because it is precious stuff. It's
There's
good
very,
stuff.
very little of this left, and now it's on its latest, actually, or its latest disgorgement, where, you know, like the 2010 Blanc de Blanc, this has spent a lot of time on lees, and it's wonderful.
And on lees, when we keep saying that phrase, it's my old surname, but it basically means on its yeast. So it's lying on its side. Actually, I mean, it sounds horrendous. It's on dead yeast, but that is what begins to give all these wonderful sort of biscuity bread.
The death of yeast gives life and energy. It's a beautiful cycle.
Yeah, the word what's that
Autolysis.
word? Autolysis. I love that word. It just sounds great, does it? And actually, we should really, like Blue Peter, have its box is pretty cool. So if you wanted to get the 6 and then give a couple as a present, I mean, the box is good. You know, it's wedding present territory. It's super cool.
Drink the bottle yourself. Just give the box.
Just give the box. In fact, never take a bottle in a box. Actually, it's a disaster. I've done that, and then you get a bottle of prosecco. I'm like, I want Dermot's wine, not the prosecco, but it's sizzling there in the box.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that completes our trilogy of the 2010s, and now we've got something really rather magnificent. Okay, so
we'll go back. Just as a very quick aside, do keep these. I've been known to keep wines in all sorts of terrible places, like on top of our tumble dryer, and they amazingly your wines seem to age well even there. But this do keep in the dark. We want to see that beautiful golden colour, but it actually doesn't enjoy lots of light.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so very, very special wine. Kirsty Goring, is this the first time you've tasted this? Yes. Okay.
Woo!
I have to admit, this is the second time I've tasted this.
Okay.
Very recently, I tasted this wine for the first time, and it's, well, you know, this is an enormous wine, not just because of the size of the bottle, but
did we suddenly look small?
Yeah. The 2013. So the 2013 Cuvée Brut, vintage Cuvée Brut, the one that came after the 2010 that we opened this tasting with, was a fantastic wine for us because I think for the first time ever, it won 2 major trophies, both the decanter and the IWSC trophy.
International Wine and Spirit Competition.
Exactly. Within like a month of those competitions happening, it came first out of over 100 wines in both competitions. Now, either that was an extraordinary commendation of the judges involved, or it's just the wine that just managed to be totally brilliant on each occasion. You'd have to hope it was both of those things. I'm sure it was. But we sold all of that round about, I think, 10,000 bottles. That disappeared because, you know, in 2017 when it won those selection of trophies, it just disappeared. It walked out of the place.
Because people are funny, actually, and they often buy wine just on awards.
Yeah, it's true.
I would say, whenever you can, go for a sneaky taste like we're having now. Or at least listen to someone who's tasting it. But yeah, and it was so interesting, that wine, when it was really, because again, actually, following on from a more opulent wine we've just tasted, Blanc de Noir, I would say, in contrast to the 2010, the one we did first, our Cuvée, and Cuvée being the blend of wine, so it's our signature wine, really, isn't it? Our Cuvée.
It is.
This one was a tad more opulent, actually, and it was more English, sort of orchardy, than it wasn't so lemon.
If you think about, you're absolutely precisely correct. If you think about 2010, 100% in barrel, Pinot dominant, 1/3 Chardonnay, no malolactic. In 2013, I put it all into barrels as well. Again, it's Pinot, slightly different configuration, but Pinot dominant. And then I felt the acidity of the wine was a little bit too prominent. So once I took all the assemblage out of the barrel, I put it in stainless steel, and I put it through malolactic fermentation, and then cold stabilized and filtered the wine. We sold all the bottles. I also made 10,000 1,000 magnums, 10,000 bottles, 1,000. We kept these in the cellar, and here it goes.
And now why, and as you're pouring, why didn't we release the magnum at the same time?
The magnums always take more time than single bottles to mature, and they also achieve a higher level of quality.
Okay.
You know, there's
just more wine there. It's like starting with.
It's to do with the oxygen level that's inside. Yeah. You've got a greater amount of lees in contact with the wine. You've got a smaller amount of oxygen inside, of air, of space inside it.
So it's going to stay fresh.
It'll stay fresher for longer, and the rate of maturing of development of the wine is much slower, much slower. Okay. So it needs that time, but it reaches a higher level. Yeah. I'm really, really, really excited about this. We're going to be releasing this around about Christmas time, because we disgorged them in September of last year. Is that correct? Around Christmas time?
Wow. Oh my goodness gracious me. I remember watching you disgorge us. Just for those of you, again, Dermot throws in this wonderful sounding phrase, malolactic fermentation. I like to think of you've got mallow, and you've got these acid tones that we've talked about that are more lemony, and then you can put it through a process. It's actually like, it's not really a fermentation. I love hearing it downstairs because it's when you get some blup blups that are actually a bit slower than the first fermentation, where it's blup 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 blup, and that's when it's turning into more lactic, creamier acids, as it sounds, more like a sort of milky acid rather than that lemony, zesty. And it makes it in some ways, for some, more palatable, easier to drink.
It changes the flavor profile. You can lose some of the primary fruit as you lose that sharp acidity, but very often once it then softens the acidity of the palate, it does generate some more complexity and a more savory aspect. Some houses or producers will choose to always do mallow, some will choose not to do mallow, and what we like to do here, what I like to do is we do mallow in some batches, no mallow, and then we've got the option to blend. It depends on the year. 2013, big harvest, really late spring, late harvest, a lot of acidity in the grapes, so the wines have taken some time. If you do mallow on them, you get quite a big shift in the acid profile.
And actually, that's key again to say, because I know a lot of people have been asking why can we age English wines so well, and that keeps coming up again and again. And actually, I imagine part of it is there is this acidity there.
It's the acidity, but it's not just the acidity. People say, oh, it's the acidity which gives the wine the ability to age. It's this natural preservative. Forget about SO2. It's really acidity is the natural preservative within the wine, but also the ripeness that we achieve in England. That very slow, long ripeness with a long growing season. We acquire these very delineated and detailed flavors in the wine. Physiological ripeness. It's difficult to achieve in hot climates. If you are lucky enough and you protect your plants well enough during the season against disease, you can actually attain full ripeness in England. And it's these two things that are giving wonderful aging potential. I always say and think of it like, if you go and buy fruit that says ripen at home, and you have to put that peach in your fruit bowl, and you're supposedly ripening it, and you think this thing is never going to ripen, and I then have to put it in the oven, and actually those flavours don't really develop. When actually they've stayed on the tree and have ripened over a long time. The difference when you literally pick a peach up and you think, oh my goodness, that's the complexity of it. I sort of sometimes think that's like in England. If we can leave it, because actually you have to pick, don't you, in a hot country. At some point, if the sugars keep going up, the alcohol's also going to go up, and the alcohol's, If you're in Champagne and the alcohol goes beyond, or the potential alcohol because of the amount of sugar goes beyond a certain level, 13, you lose the appellation. You can't actually pick your grapes. You can't use it. And a lot of warmer countries than ours, sparkling wine producers will have to pick because the acidity starts to tumble, and nobody wants to add acidity to wines. It's better to actually pick them early, but those are suboptimal situations for making sparkling wine.
I always remember you saying that when you were first here, saying it is the long growing season that we have. And in some ways, it'll frustrate us, because it'll mean, oh, you're hanging on to the last minute. And in 2013, what a good example of that.
But it makes it fun, eh? It certainly makes it fun.
And now we have those moments of going, hold your nerve, Dermot, let's not pick, let's wait.
All the evidence is here from 2009, 2010, 2013. We had some grapes on the 4th of November, Chardonnay grapes on the 4th of November here in 2013.
And you are holding your nerve, because if you get a frost at that point, you've had
absolutely.
It. So,
or if winter suddenly arrives the day before you pick. Ideally, we like winter to arrive the day after we pick.
But it has been known that we have perhaps been one of the later pickers.
A question: how long can our wines actually age? It's a good question. It's really difficult to answer, other than to say much longer than actually you think. And we're constantly surprised, just like doing this tasting tonight, at how extraordinarily well English wines can age. If the wines that I make, they're built for aging, really. The style that I go for is built for aging. But the answer is, you buy a bottle of English sparkling wine, and you put it in a cellar, in good cellaring conditions. In 10 years' time, it will still be it'll have matured into something extraordinary. In 20 years' time, we'll see. Maybe it'll have gone over the plateau and will start to come down. Yeah. But on good vintages, these wines are wonderful.
Everything we have tasted tonight, which has got some age on it, has got freshness to run. I mean, it's unbelievable. I think it could even survive on top of my tumble dryer in that outside room.
Not with me around.
I know. Oh dear. I mean, that to me is, you know, we do talk about pairing our wines with different things. This wine, I would just have it.
This is still it's a baby. Yeah. It's a baby. You know. Bottled in 2014 from the 13 vintage, disgorged last year, which would have been 19. So yeah, we are 6 years on these. No, 5 years on these. This wine will continue to improve for another 10, 15, 20 years. Mark my words. Yeah.
No, it's one to put down for your children's wedding.
All right.
What are your favourites, Dermot? Or is there, or what is your favourite out of what we've tasted tonight? I mean, people love to know. It's
for me. Wow, anything in Magnum. Yeah. Anything in Magnum. Yeah. And after that, the Blanc and Blancs.
I mean, that Blanc de Blanc, oh no.
This is extraordinary, and I've been looking forward to this for an awful long time. And this wine is extraordinary and will go on to be absolutely, utterly extraordinary. Yeah. Yeah. But for now, I'm a Blanc de Blanc guy, Blanc de Blanc.
I think I really am too. And although I've always said the 10 is my favourite, I have to say, tasting that 9, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I am so glad it wasn't released, actually, when it was, because I mean, it feels it's completely and utterly just coming into its own.
Watch this space for the release of the 2009.
Yeah. It really is watch this space, because that's the only space you're going to get it, is this space. Is here in a different
when the builders come back.
When the builders do come back. Now we're getting another question. There's, oh yes. And actually, when we do launch this place, we are going to do a really, really exciting thing, and we are going to do what's called in the trade, and I never dared ask what this was, because everyone sounds like they know, a vertical tasting and a horizontal tasting, which sounds like something you do on a spreadsheet, but explain what that means. We'll talk about it.
Vertical tasting is lots of different years, so like we haven't quite done with the Blanc de Blanc, 2009, 2010, then we could do our 2011 or 15, so in years like that, in chronological order. Yeah. Horizontal is when you taste lots of wines from the same vintage. So we've done both a vertical and a horizontal tasting tonight. That's quite an achievement, isn't it?
That really is.
All from the same year. But let's, talking about favourite wines, the Blanc Noir 2010 is an astonishing wine, and it's not around for much longer. We haven't actually scheduled to release the 2014 Blanc Noir
not yet.
That's a fascinating wine, Pinot Noir, but with some Pinot Meunier. The 2010 Blanc Noir is only Pinot Noir, so that'll be really interesting. And
I always think with the Blanc de Noir, 10, it's if you want to really impress someone, and they almost don't need to be sparkling wine fans at all. A lot of red wine drinkers who've come on tours, which is my usual habitat, who say, "Oh, I just brought my wife along. I definitely don't drink sparkling wine. I'm a red wine man. Give them some of that," and they're like, "Oh, that's actually really, really interesting, and I could have that." And they could have it with their red meat. Actually, they could have it with their meat. So I think it's a good one if you don't know if someone is a total fan.
Yeah.
But
this Magnum is something else, isn't it?
Yeah. No. Absolutely. Are we? And we're good on questions.
Final question.
From
Jess. Is Dermot challenging Mick?
Oh my God.
Am I challenging Mick Hucknall tonight? I've been doing it for 30 years. Come on, Jess Lavers.
And that is what we used to listen to, right? I mean, I'm talking REM. Are we talking REM?
No, Mick Hucknall. Simply Red.
Simply Red, even. Simply Red, which was back totally in our time. Jess.
But I worked at a call centre in Norwich 25 years ago that I was referred to as Mick Hucknall. I did have significantly longer hair at the time. Thank you, Jess. We love you.
Gosh, what fun. I mean, I feel utterly spoiled having got to taste all of those. I can't really bear that I can't share them all with you. The intensity of flavour in my mouth right now is completely and utterly mind-blowing. But we just want to say thank you so much for joining us. If you've hung on this long, you have done so well. Whatever, we hope you've at least enjoyed one glass of English. And if you haven't in English Wine Week, please kind of don't miss out. And there's lots of others other than us. And actually, I did just to say we don't only talk about us. I had an organic Chardonnay from Oxney Organic the other day, and I just have to say, I mean, I'm sure we're not supposed to plug one other wine, and there are many other wineries, but I have to say, I had it with raw beans in our garden, and I was utterly blown away. And I just wanted to take my hat off to them doing organics, and it's something we're excited by, organics anyway. And yeah, that was great. So there's lots out there. But thank you. And oh yeah, damn it, you do this bit. You're so good at this bit. So
it's been we've had a busy English week. That's easy for me to say.
We've
had a busy English wine week, and it's fantastic to have the focus on what we do here in England, because our industry is growing at an extraordinary rate, and that is because your thirst and interest in our wines is growing at an extraordinary rate. So thank you so much indeed. And I think we will be even more connected after what we've done in the last 3 months, and the new ways that we've been forced to connect have actually proven to be a great way to stay in contact going forward. So let's keep this up. Subscribe to our website, wistonestate.com. Pop your email address in there. You'll find out all the events, all the bits and pieces, all the new things like this, all the offers for wine, and also the program for when we're going to be opening our visitor centre here next year.
Which will be complete with somewhere to eat as well, which is
absolutely.
really exciting for us. I'm feeling starving now. So lovely to see you all. Bye-bye.
Great stuff. Take care. Bye-bye.